Tempus here. Hello and welcome to Tempus Weekly. In this episode, we're going to talk about the basics of stats, the attributes that certain pieces of gear will give you, such as intellect and agility. Now, this is going to be a two-part weekly, as first we will talk about the stats in World of Warcraft, and in the second part we can talk about Rift. So first off, WoW. In WoW, you have a variety of stats to choose from, and how do you know what is good for you and what isn't? Okay, so basically stats work like this. You have 5 primary stats: stamina, strength, agility, intellect, and spirit. Stamina increases how much health you have. Simple as that. Strength. Strength increases melee attack power, making you stronger so that when you smack somebody, it hurts them more. Now, this attribute is only good for warriors, paladins, and death knights. It will also increase their parry chance. Agility is what you want if you're a feral druid, enhancement shaman, hunter, or rogue. It makes you stronger, increases your chance to critically hit, and your chance to avoid hits through dodge. Intellect. Intellect is what spellcasters and healers want. It makes you smarter, so that your spells increase in power, and your spells have a higher chance to critically hit. It also gives you more mana, and on top of that increases your mana regeneration through spirit. If you cast spells and have mana, like a mage, priest, warlock, balanced druid, elemental shaman, or any type of healer, you want this stat, and you want as much of it as you can get. The more the better. Spirit. Spirit increases your mana regeneration, so it works in conjunction with intellect. Only healers or classes that have talents which give them hit from spirit want this. A warlock, for example, wants intellect, but does not want spirit. A holy priest will want both. Another thing to note about spirit is that, though it's a primary stat, it behaves like a secondary stat in that it can be reforged. Secondary stats. Now, secondary stats are not as important as primary stats, but you still want them. If you have to choose between a primary stat that you need for your class and a secondary stat, a good rule of thumb is to go for the primary one. Mastery. Mastery is complicated because it's different for every class, so whether you want it or not depends on your spec. Haste. Haste is awesome for any class with damage over time spells, as well as cast time spells. Haste makes your spells cast faster, and at certain amounts can make your damage over time spells hit extra times, giving you a massive damage boost. Haste is a DPS stat. The only class I know of that does not like haste is a warrior, but any other class will love this stat. Attack power. You get this from strength or agility depending on your class. Attack power increases the damage of your physical attacks, so if you shoot arrows or stab people with knives, you want this stat. The more you have of it, the harder you hit, so rogues, hunters, death knights, paladins, feral druids, warriors, enhancement shamans, all want this stat. The more the merrier. Spell power. If you cast spells, you want this. You get this from intellect. It makes your spells hit harder, heal for more, and just all round more badass. If you heal or do damage with spells, you want this. So mages, warlocks, priests, shamans, any healers, you want this stat. Critical strike. Critical strike is good for basically any healing or DPS class, as it gives you a chance to deal double damage or healing. This stat is usually secondary to haste or even mastery. Hit. Hit helps you hit things. You could say it improves your aim, so you miss less. Getting hit capped is very important for any DPSer, but not so much for tanks and healers. Expertise. This stat is just for the melee classes, so if you hit people in the face at short range, this stat is probably important, but again varies depending on your spec. Again, DPS want this more than a tank would. I'm sorry tanks, I've been ignoring you. I do apologize. Let's go through defense stats now to cheer you up. Defense stats are what you want if you're a tank, and that's it. A DPS or healer doesn't tend to need these stats. Dodge. Dodge helps you avoid people Matrix style. With this stat, you help become more like Neo, and avoid hits in really awesome ways. Avoiding hits means avoiding damage, so this is a good stat to have. Parry. Parry acts like dodge, except you parry them. You tend to have more parry than dodge, so you want to try and balance it out. Block. Block is no longer a stat. Instead, you can get it through mastery, if you're a shield-wearing tank. This is your best stat, in fact. As a shield tank, you want block, which means you want a ton of mastery. Now, if you're a Death Knight or Druid, you don't get a shield. Instead, your mastery ties into giving yourself mini shields that absorb damage, because hey, when you're too damn cool to have a shield, you take less damage even when stuff does hit you. Armor. If all else fails, you have your armor to try and reduce some of the physical damage. Armor is important, but as a plate wearer, you basically have the armor you want. If you're a feral druid, fear not. By turning into a bear, you gain as much armor as a plate class. Go you. Resistance. This reduces the damage you take from magic, and you usually don't need this. PvP stats. Spell Pen. Spell Pen basically allows you to get through an enemy player's spell resist and hit him anyway. Resilience reduces the damage you take from other players. It does not affect damage from computer-controlled creatures though, so only use it for PvP. That's it for this Tempus Weekly. I hope you enjoyed and that you learned something helpful. If you want to know what stats you want for your particular class in more detail, check out noxic.com as it has stat priorities for every class. And be sure to click on that subscribe button to be notified of new videos. Cheerio.